Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds.
Hey everybody, this is Evan and John, and you're listening to the Boomer&X Show.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Boomer&X Show. We're going to have a fun-packed episode this time. Several weeks ago, you and I decided to, I guess I should say, my name is John. My friend here is Evan, because we're getting some new folks listening all the time, so I guess it might help to introduce ourselves just a little bit. We decided several weeks ago that we wanted to talk about the NFL draft today, and we're going to have someone on a little bit later that knows a whole lot about football, and just happens to be my son. But as we got to thinking about today, Saturday, May the 2nd, and everything that's going on, we decided to make this something of a sports extravaganza. We've got the fight of, is it safe to say, as far as boxing, this is the fight of the century far?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
So we've got a big fight tonight. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We have the Kentucky Derby on a little bit later today. Right now, as you and I are recording this, the race has not been run yet. That'll be in a few hours. Let's start with the fight.
What about it?
Floyd Mayweather, and Manny Pacquiao?
Manny Pacquiao, yeah.
Yeah. Mayweather's undefeated, and I believe
Pacquiao has a couple losses.
He's actually got 5 losses. Yeah. It's going on tonight. It's being held in Vegas. They usually happen about 10 o'clock our time, I guess.
Yeah.
Combined purse estimated to be $300 million.
It's ridiculous
for the two of them.
Yeah, and Mayweather's getting 60% of that. Pacquiao's getting 40%.
Now, unlike a lot of things, like for instance, we'll be talking about the Kentucky Derby in a minute, where payouts are determined on where you finish. With prize fights, payouts are actually determined ahead of time, and it's really based on name recognition, who brings more viewers, fans to the event.
See, what else does it have to do with? That's pretty much it, just who's bringing the bigger crowd. But I mean, like before, I guess a lot of people don't know, the winner doesn't always get the most.
No.
Like you said, it's determined before the fight. It's
determined before the fight, yeah. It sure is. And again, it's estimated that it'll bring in roughly a $300 million purse, with Mayweather getting 60% of that. This fight was originally supposed to take place in 2010. And since I don't follow boxing quite as much as I used to.
I don't remember why. It was, I don't know, probably some kind of disagreement on the payouts or something.
Well, and a lot of times with boxing, there are things that fall through. And boxing is very different than it was back in its heyday when I followed it. But even back then in the 70s, you would have promoters getting in the way of things happening. The two big names in boxing promotion, Don King and Bob Arum, just a lot of times negotiations would fall through, maybe location, maybe, again, payout percentages, things would happen. So anyway, this fight was originally supposed to take place about 5 years ago. It will finally take place tonight. Do you have a winner in mind? Do you have an opinion about which way it might go?
Yeah, Manny Pacquiao's going to win.
And based on...
Not knockout or anything, I think he's just going to go the distance.
Championship fights are 12 rounds now. They used to be 15.
Mm-hmm.
This is a welterweight fight. Yep. They weighed in yesterday. I actually saw the weigh-in on TV. There were over 11,000 people at the weigh-in. Definitely a lot of hype, a lot of promotion going in. The pay-per-view, if you want to buy that, is $90. If you want it in HD, it's $100. I won't be purchasing that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, or you could just try and go somewhere that's like a bar or sports bar somewhere that has it playing. But I mean, you should be there now.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Didn't you tell me some places were charging a cover?
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere
so
is.
I'll probably just have to follow updates. I don't think that I'll be going out and trying to catch it.
Yeah, I guess we're not super crazy boxing fans. We're not even going out to see the craziest fight of the year.
Well, I was a big, and the welterweights in the going from the late 70s into the early 80s, when you had Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Thomas Hitman Hearns, Marvis Marvelin Hagler, and we're talking Hagler, and they were welterweight, super welterweight, middleweight. They, kind of drifted in and out of close weight ranges there. And that's when, again, for this weight classification, to me, it was in the heyday. The earlier 70s were more about the heavyweights with Frazier and Ali and George Foreman and Ken Norton, some of the big names from that era that fought each other a lot and had some, really big fights. Big fight tonight, I'm going to go with Mayweather. He's undefeated. Pacquiao has lost 5. If Pacquiao had only lost a couple, I could forgive that a little better, but 5 is quite a few losses to have going into, quote, the fight of the century. So I'm going to go with Mayweather. By the time folks are hearing this, it'll all be done, and we'll know what happened.
Cool.
In fact, I'm going to say a knockout.
I think he's going to go for a knockout, but neither one of them had a knockout in a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I'll say 10th round, even if it's just a TKO. I'll say a 10th round knockout. So, second topic, and this is one that if you are a fan of our show and going back to our very introductory episode back in December, I mentioned that I was a big horse race fan. And often attended races in person at Louisiana.
Is that what they do at races? They play that, right?
Before every race. Yeah, even if it's some $5,000 claiming race.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh, yeah, they play that.
And it's, I guess that's just one of the traditions that every single place does?
Yes, that's played before. Well, it's certainly played before every race of every place I've been.
I wonder where that little ditty came from.
Who knows? I do not know. But you mentioned the word tradition, and that is a very good word to use with horse racing because, for instance, today is the 141st running of the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby has been run every year since 1875. That's about 10 years after the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, that's longer than the Olympics.
Certainly longer than things like the World Series and the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl's younger than I am. So, but this is a couple of things here. If you're a sports fan, hopefully you're going to enjoy this show. If you're not that much of a sports fan, hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation.
Kind of try and make it a little educational.
A little bit of a learning experience.
Learn something.
Starting with today's race, the Kentucky Derby, this is the first leg of what's called the Triple Crown. The Triple Crown races are the Kentucky Derby, which is 1.25 miles. And by the way, when these horses run 1.25 miles today, it's the first time any of them will run 1.25 miles. None of them have ever gone more than 1.125 miles before. And every extra half of a furlong or furlong matters when you're talking about horse racing, which is why it's so hard to win the Belmont, which is the third and final leg of the Triple Crown, which is actually 1.5 miles. So they're going 1.25 miles for the first time. This is a Kentucky Derby. 2 weeks from today, the Preakness, which is the second leg, is 1.316 miles. It's just a little bit shorter. It's run at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore. And then 3 weeks after that, the Belmont, which is run at Belmont in a town of Elmont, New York, which is right in there with New York City. I mean, it's very, very close to New York City. And again, that one's at 1.5 miles. So those are the 3 races that make up the Triple Crown. The Triple Crown has not been won since Affirmed did it in 1978.
Oh, wow.
So it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. Affirmed in 78. It actually happened 3 times in the 70s. 73 with the great legendary Secretariat, 77 with Seattle Slew, and 78 with Affirmed.
What happens after you win the Triple Crown?
Well, you just go on to more races which aren't considered a part of the Triple Crown, but there are certainly big races that are still to be run throughout the course of the year. See, another little thing, the record time 1 minute 59 and 2/5 seconds set by Secretariat, which 1973, and here we are 42 years later, still stands.
And that was a huge horse.
Secretariat was a large horse.
Just-
Yes, he was. He was a very large horse. This is a horse for 3-year-olds. You can only run in and win the Kentucky Derby, or for that matter, the Preakness or the Belmont one time. They are for 3-year-olds. All horses have the same birthday, January 1st. Now, horses are actually born at different times, but on January 1st, every horse becomes a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old.
Gotcha.
So I guess it just makes things easier that way. So if you have a horse that's born in May, early in his racing career, say early 3-year-old or 2-year-olds, they do race 2-year-olds, they don't race 1-year-olds. A horse born in May, early in his racing career, may have a disadvantage to a horse born in, say, February or March because he's just not quite as mature yet.
So they'll probably be scared in the, what is that called?
In the gate?
Yeah, in the
They
gate.
could be fractious in the gate. Certainly a lot of 2-year-olds are fractious in the gate. I think it has something to do with emotional maturity, if you will, but it also has a lot to do with physical maturity. I mean, think about it. If you are running in what is the premier event in your sport as a 3-year-old, every month
It matters.
it matters, right. You know, if you're competing in college football as a 21-year-old, well, 21 in 2 months and 21 in 5 months really doesn't matter. But as a 3-year-old, it matters. So again, this is for a 3-year-old. It is the first leg of the Triple Crown, which hasn't been won since 1978 with Affirmed. Interesting side note with Affirmed, when he won the Triple Crown in 1978, the same horse was second in all of those races, a horse named Alidar. And they were close races too. I mean, Alidar is a name that's kind of relegated. You have to be a pretty hardcore race fan to remember the name Alidar. Second place,
No one cares.
no one really cares. So, but I do remember it. Again, I've been a race fan ever since I was old enough to first see a horse go around a track. So this is something I look forward to. I jotted down some notes about some of the contenders. For one thing, there are 18 horses running in today's race, and it is a very deep field. Usually,
What does that mean?
usually in the Derby field, you will have, say, 3 or 4, maybe 5
Like
horses.
first place contenders?
Well, that are accomplished already.
Okay.
And, then you'll have a second and third tier that maybe have a lot of promise. Maybe they have good breeding, but they haven't accomplished that much just yet. And then you'll have some that are just rounding out the field and probably don't have a real good chance, although there are times when really long shots come in. It's rare, that's why they're long shots. This field actually has probably 8 or 9 horses that could be said to have a legitimate chance.
So does that affect the odds of your how people bet?
It does. Actually, the last time when we looked at the odds on TV a while ago, the current favorite, American Pharaoh, is actually 3-1, which is fairly low given the depth and the talent in this field of horses. The size of the field and the competitiveness of the field does certainly play a role in the odds you're going to get. When you buy, just again for the uninitiated, when you are at the races or if you're betting off track and you buy a ticket, your ticket is not determined by the odds when you buy it. Your ticket is determined by the odds when the race actually goes off.
Yeah.
And so your odds can go up and down based on how other people are betting. So the betting public does affect the payoff that someone gets.
But it doesn't affect the racers, the owners of the horses' payout, does it?
No, that's completely independent. And this race, the Kentucky Derby, carries a $2 million guarantee. I believe there's some extra from entry fees that goes into that, but it's at least $2 million, and then it'll be a little bit more.
Nothing compared to this boxing purse.
Well, no, certainly $300 million split up 2 ways versus $2 million. And I think with horse races, the top 5 or 6 positions, get something.
Yeah.
But the lion's share of it, and I think it's usually about 60%, goes to the winning owner. Now, then out of that, the owner gives the jockey 10% and the trainer 10%. So the winning owner is only going to get, and this is before taxes, is going to get 40% of the winning purse.
Yeah. Still, I mean, say you got to probably get most of those thoroughbreds for what, like $100K?
The price ranges so much you can't even. I mean, some of them are seven figures, and
Jeez.
and in fact, I think last year California Chrome was purchased for like $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just varies. You can sometimes find a needle in a haystack. Our betting favorite right now, American Pharaoh, winner of 4 out of 5 lifetime, all graded stakes. 3 out of 4 of those grade 1. His most recent race was on April 11th. It was an 8-length victory in the Arkansas Derby at Oaklawn Park in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Earnings of $1.4 million already. His jockey is Victor Espinoza, who won last year in the Derby aboard California Chrome. And certainly you've gotta like the record, the past performances, how impressive American Pharaoh's been. Since he shipped to Churchill Downs, he's had one very impressive workout. I guess the only thing that is a negative, other than the fact that this is a very deep field with a lot of competition, is the fact that he really likes to be on or very close to the lead early on, and he's coming from the 16 post, which is outside. So if he wants to get that early lead, he's going to have to get out in front and cross over paths early and spend some energy running more ground than a horse that would be breaking from, say, 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere a little bit more toward the inside or middle post. So, I mean, that'll take some doing. But again, the horse has been very, very impressive, but it is a deep field. And that's why it's so hard to actually pick winners in a horse race, because they're shipping in from all kind of places. Some of them have run against each other before. Some of them haven't. Horses take to different surfaces differently. Every track has a little bit of a different surface, a little bit different of a composition of the dirt it's run over. They're actually introducing some synthetic courses at a lot of places where it's not real dirt they're running on. Of course, then there are turf races, and that's a different animal altogether. So it's hard to pick a winner, as opposed to, say, a football game where, you've got 2 teams in there. Here, you've got 18 possibilities. And you've got things like racing traffic and stumbling and being blocked out by horses in front of you. Did you ship well? There's a lot that goes into it, and it is very hard to determine the winner ahead of time.
Well, they call it gambling.
But it is, to me, it is fascinating, and I would like to see a horse win the Triple Crown for the first time since 1978. It would be kind of nice. If we get, I believe the field that we're looking at today is so strong that if by chance we get someone, say Dortmund or American Pharaoh, that does dominate the race, I think we might have a chance at a legitimate attempt. Of course, we had a legitimate attempt last year. California Chrome won the Derby and the Preakness, and then I think finished third in the Belmont. So, I mean, that was a legitimate try, but there have been a lot of those since 1978. There really have been.
So we've got the draft that started Thursday and still going on today. It's the 3rd round today. What rounds is it? Is it like first, second, third, and the first?
On Thursday night was the first round.
Okay.
Friday was second and third.
And today they're doing
4 through 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, some stats for you just to get where these guys are at being drafted. 1 million high school students participate in football annually, and very few of those, only 1 in 17, will even play college football. It's an even longer shot that a high school player will eventually play for an NFL team. Only 1 in 50 college seniors are drafted by an NFL team. That's according to the NCAA. That means that just 9 in 10,000, or 0.09% of high school senior football players will eventually be drafted by an NFL team.
So when you go to your local Friday night high school football game, the chances that you're watching a future NFL are
0.09.
Yeah, extremely small. And again, for the uninitiated, let's talk a little bit about how the draft actually works.
So the draft, just in case y'all didn't know, is when the NFL has 3 ways of of getting new players. One way is a free agent. That'd be like, say, I guess you or me could be a free agent, huh?
Yeah.
There's really no. I guess there's some sort of qualifications, but
athletic ability.
yeah. So that's what a free agent would
But
be.
within the past few years, the Saints had a player that was a free agent, had been like driving a beer delivery truck or something, and tried out. But
Well, the Cowboys, what was it? They tried getting an Olympic gold medalist to sign with them, and he turned them down.
Carl Lewis.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, he was a sprinter. That was, I guess, back in the 80s.
But so that's what I'm getting at is, really you can draft whoever you. Well, it wouldn't be draft, would it? Sign a free agent.
You can sign it, right?
Can't draft a free agent. The only people you can draft are high school seniors. No, it's not always seniors either.
Well, coming out of college, you have to
there's rules.
You have to have 3 years.
Yeah.
You have to have 3 years in college before you can go into the NFL.
Yeah.
For instance, in the NBA, there are players that go straight from high school
Can't do that anymore.
into the. Oh, you can't.
No.
Okay.
They changed that when LeBron James,
I
after
see.
LeBron and Amari Stoudemire, that was the
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
So you got free agent. Then now you have restricted free agent, which is a player from another team. Another team can make an offer for him, but his current team is also allowed to match that offer. So you're already on a team that you're considered a restricted free agent, and then compensatory picks.
Yeah, compensatory
Picks, and that's based on the net loss of restricted free agents. The limit for compensatory picks is 4 per team, and that kind of evens out the cap limits and stuff like that. Those are what those are mainly for, is what I understood.
Yeah. And you can trade. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
you
play.
trade even a pick.
You can trade a pick, and it happens all the time.
Oh yeah, all the
Yeah,
time.
and in fact, for instance, the Saints traded Jimmy Graham to Seattle and got their first round pick this year,
Yeah.
which was the 31st pick. And I want to touch on that real quick. The draft order is determined by where teams finished the previous year.
Yes.
It's inversely proportional. In fact, meaning if you were the worst team in the NFL last year,
You get to pick
get to
first.
pick first, going all the way down to the Super Bowl champion
Who get to pick last?
picks last.
Yes.
But that order can be upset by trades.
Yes.
But other than that, that's the order.
The movie Draft Day is pretty neat. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I watched it with you Friday night as part of our getting ready for this. Yes.
Yes, it this guy, he had pick 7. So it was in the movie the Cleveland Browns had pick 7, and then they trade 3
First round picks.
for
for the next 3 years,
first
right?
round picks
Right.
for the number 1 overall pick. And then he does some trading and some moving around. He ends up getting 3 first round picks. And so that's just how it can end up. You can actually, depending on trades and whatever deals you make, you can definitely upset the order of the drafts.
You can. And in fact, just watching the draft some over the past couple of nights, there were trades that were announced with just minutes before it was time for a team to make a pick.
And speaking of minutes, they're always on the clock. From the second round 1 overall number 1 starts, it's even called on the clock. And
You have 10 minutes.
You have 10 minutes
in round 1.
In round 1.
After that, you only have 5 minutes per round.
Yeah.
Right. But you have 10 minutes to make your pick or trade.
Yes. And if you don't, then the team after you can pick who you were probably trying to decide to pick.
Right. But you don't lose your pick for the round.
No, you can still submit a pick.
Right. It just.
But if someone after you took that guy, then sorry.
Right. But you lose your spot,
Yeah.
but not your overall pick. Teams determine who they want to pick on several
On many
several
things.
criteria.
Yeah.
I mean, one is certainly their college playing career.
Yeah.
2 is how they perform at the combine held each spring, where NFL scouts and coaches gather. Players show up and they go through all kind of physical exercises, and they take
40 meter sprint.
40-meter sprints, vertical jumps, all kind of football specific
They have to take
drills. Take the Wonderlic test.
Yeah, that's that.
That's
IQ
kind of
test
an
almost,
intelligence aptitude test. Yeah.
They definitely dig into their personal lives.
They definitely do.
They vet their family, their friends, their everything.
It seems like with some of these guys, they ought to dig a little more. I mean, really, because you still end up with a lot issues.
Well, I think they know certain things. I think they just think they can put up with it. They get a $1 million player come and play, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, multi-million. I mean, these first-round guys are going to get, multi-million dollars. And certainly where a player is picked is very important to the player because that determines their money right out of the gate, right there.
Oh, yeah. First position and fourth position is a difference in a couple $1 million.
And by the time you work your way into the later rounds, you're talking about hundreds of thousands instead of multiple millions. I think $350,000, $400,000 a year. But which to you and me sounds like a lot of money. But when you have guys on the same field, working within 5 feet of you, making $10 million or $12 million a year, that's a big difference. So certainly your value, at least your first contract, is determined by and large where you're drafted. Now, as you go through your career, you can enhance or drop your own value by your performance, but that first contract is determined by where you're picked. So being picked early beats the heck out of being picked late. Of course, being picked late beats the heck out of not being picked at all.
You ever heard of Mr. Irrelevant?
Not until we started looking into this, no.
It's pretty funny. It's actually a celebrated thing. Like the first overall pick is a big deal, but they made a big deal out of the last person picked called Mr. Irrelevant, and they throw a parade and everything, and I think it's in California. They take them through California, and they get to spend a week in Disneyland. I don't know how it. I guess somebody felt real bad for the last guy one time and sent him to Disneyland for a week, and now it's tradition. But yeah, Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant. Huh?
They give him the Lozman Trophy instead of the Heisman. I think that's just I don't know. For me, I just got drafted last, which is like we just put out is very hard to do. So even getting drafted last is something.
Well, and there are players that go on the Hall of Fame careers that are drafted late. Tom Brady.
Oh, Tom Brady
is a perfect example.
200th or something.
He's got 4 Super Bowl rings, and he was very late in the draft. Yeah. Who was it? Who was Marquise Colston, Saints wide receiver out of, I believe, the tiny school Hofstra, if I remember correctly. He was a 7th round pick, and Marcus Colston had an excellent career.
Well,
with the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, draft order really doesn't always pay out because number 1 overall LSU quarterback was the biggest bust of all time.
Jamarcus Russell. I mean, drafted by the Raiders in 2007 after the 2006 season and amounted to absolutely nothing.
Yep.
There have been other big-time picks. You go back several years before that, and a quarterback named Ryan Leaf, I believe, was the second quarterback. Did he get the same year as Peyton Manning, I think?
That sounds about right.
And Peyton Manning, of course, will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. And Ryan Leaf, you've got to be a pretty hardcore football fan to even know the name. He amounted to nothing. So if you were to do a statistical breakdown of high first round, low first round versus 6th and 7th round, certainly over the whole, your first round guys are more impactful. But individually speaking, that's not guaranteed at all.
Nope.
Which is a big reason why teams are doing more and more looking into off-the-field type stuff. Because character plays a big role.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you have a guy who beats his girlfriend and you draft him, he's going to be sitting in jail for a good time.
Well, what if he just does things like steals crab legs or then acts like a dumbass on his campus? And the reason I'm saying those is because those are specific to our number 1 overall pick this year, Jameis Winston. And we'll get into that a little more in depth when we get my son on the phone, who has taken a lot of notes and done a lot of following of the draft. So we're going to actually break down some of the picks, and we're going to break down how some teams maybe met their needs real well. Some teams maybe didn't do such a good job, at least on first impressions. None of it can be said for certain because it'll be determined by how these players actually play once they get on the field, the contributions they make. But part of the fun of draft day or draft weekend is trying to figure out who did well, who didn't do so well.
Yep. And I'm going to leave that up to y'all because there's going to be so much and so many names that I don't know. And you and John Jr. stay on top of it so much that I kind of feel like I'll just be getting in y'all's way. So I'm going to just step back and monitor the levels and everything and make sure it's sounding good.
Well, I'll be relying on his observations more than I did do a pretty good job of watching the first round, and I have some thoughts on the first 2 picks taken. Beyond that, a lot of the information
I'm pretty excited to see what information he's going to bring because
he studies football like no one I know.
Yeah.
I mean, he has lived. I remember when he was a little kid, I stuck a football in his hand early on. I mean, 4, 5, 3, whatever. And he has played it or studied it ever since. And he's 33 years old, so he's definitely got a lot of football knowledge, and he's going to share that with us coming up after our break. We're going to try to get him on the phone to see what we can come up with for our second segment, which is going to be NFL draft analysis. Hey, John.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, good. Thanks for joining us here. Evan's here with me. You've met Evan a couple of times.
Oh, yes, I have.
We're calling you for that NFL draft chat.
All right, good deal. Good deal. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you with us. I know you've been watching, paying attention. You usually do anyway, and I know you've paid a little extra attention since we were doing this for the show this year, so I certainly appreciate the effort. I want to jump right in and ask you about the first 2 picks that occurred Thursday night in the first round. The first pick, quarterback Jameis Winston for Florida State to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, off-the-field issues are well documented. Give me your impressions of the pick.
Long term, I think that Jameis is really going to have to do some maturing before he can be a good pro quarterback. And that's just off the field and just maturity issues. Even if he's not getting in trouble, he just seems to just be immature. He seems to have kind of the problem that a lot of these guys have, that they get away with everything their whole life and they just think that that's okay. And he seems to suffer from that. So even if he's not getting in trouble, I think there's a lack of maturity there that's going to slow his development. On the field, he forces the ball quite a bit.
He threw quite a few interceptions in his career, didn't he?
He did, and he could have thrown a lot more. That looking back at tape, you'll see that he had a lot of passes that easily could have been picked that were dropped or tipped, or the receiver helped him out. But he threw quite a few, and he easily could have thrown quite a few more. And if you do it in college, you're definitely going to do it in the NFL. So I think that he has potential, but I wouldn't have taken it.
Let me ask you specifically about some of the positives that he does bring. His arm strength is good.
Yes, he throws a good ball. Throws a really good ball. Throws a really catchable ball. He has really good touch. Can make really good decisions with the ball.
So he
does a good job of moving around in the pocket, getting away from pressure. So all of those things he's good at.
So his so-called football IQ you would rate as pretty good because of his decision-making?
For the most part, to me, it seems like that there's like a good Jameis and a bad Jameis. Sometimes you're watching him and you're like, wow, this guy's really making good decisions and he's really putting the ball where it needs to be. And then you see a couple throws that just kind of out of nowhere and you're like, wow, what is he looking at? Why would he do that? So I guess you just say inconsistent as far as the decision-making. And I think a lot of them, though, he was trying to force it, trying to make a play. maybe when the play wasn't there. And, that can be fixed. So
Right. Let me ask you specifically about the team he went to, Tampa Bay. Is he going to be asked to bear the burden of a starting quarterback from the get-go?
Well, I would think so. So I would think that given the situation in Tampa, they want to sell tickets. They do have some weapons at receiver. When they drafted, their two next picks were offensive linemen. They do have good weapons at tight end and receiver. So he's being put in a situation where he's got kind of what he needs to be successful at the skill position, and they upgraded on their O-line after they picked him.
So if I remember correctly, last year they picked receiver Mike Evans out of Texas A&M.
Okay, yeah, Mike Evans. What about him?
They picked him last year.
Right.
So he's a big time receiver. He's a large target. He knows how to go up and get the ball. And he's a second-year receiver now. So to your point, and again, they did in their next two picks after picking Winston were offensive linemen. So with all that said, it does look like they are at least making sound decisions and trying to put him in as good a spot as possible.
Yeah, they want to keep pressure off of him because, a young quarterback, getting pressure on him, he's sure to make mistakes. They also have Vincent Jackson at receiver, and they also have Austin and Jenkins at tight end, and those are all three of those guys are really big targets. So he's going to have a chance to be successful. It's just he's going to be put to the test. If he's up to snuff, then he'll have a good moment. If he's not, then he'll struggle. One thing that I think about in somebody like Jameis is that he's never really struggled. Obviously in high school he didn't have any problems. He was 26-1 at Florida State. Tampa's not going 26-1 this year. They're going to lose games, and that's where that maturity comes into play. Is he going to be able to deal with that? Is he going to be able to keep working hard? Is he going to be able to mentally stay in the game, stay into practice, stay into the film studies when they have a losing record and he's frustrated?
Well, and that's a good point to make because a lot of us that are college football fans were watching the one game that he lost. He did not hold his composure well on the field or on the sidelines.
He did not, and that was one thing that I was kind of talking about earlier with the maturity. I believe he's going to struggle mightily in that department. I think off the field, he'll probably keep his nose clean. I really do. When you think about it, he wasn't out, in college. He wasn't out getting in trouble, getting in fights and things like that. He had the thing where he took the crab legs, but he goes back and says later, well, that guy gave me those crab legs, and somebody in the store didn't realize that it had been given to me, which I believe. I think, these big-time college athletes, they get stuff given to them all the time. I think somebody just didn't get the memo that he was supposed to get that for free. So off the field, I really don't see him getting in trouble.
Okay,
but there's still a lack of maturity.
Probably more football and struggling for the first time in his life related type stuff is kind of how you see it.
Yeah, I think that when things get tough, when they're down 20-0, when he's been sacked 4 or 5 times, when he's thrown 2 or 3 picks in a game, and he's struggling maybe for the second, third week in a row, I see problems.
Bottom line, 3 years from now, is Tampa glad they made this pick, or do they have buyer's remorse 3 years from now?
Buyer's remorse.
Okay. As a Saints fan, in the same division with Tampa, do you like the pick? And by like it, I mean, yeah, I like it because I don't think it's going to work out. Like it in that way.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Okay, fair enough.
Like
it by not liking it.
Yeah.
Second pick, Tennessee Titans took
Mariota.
Right, Marcus Mariota. Pluses and minuses for this kid out of Oregon.
Well, as far as the maturity and intelligence, Marcus is the antithesis of Jameis. Never been in trouble a day in his life. Soft-spoken, very hardworking, seemed to be very mature beyond his years. Very driven, very focused. You can't find anything about him that you do not like, do not love about his makeup as a person and as a football player.
Last year, the Titans took LSU quarterback Zach Mettenberger. So he's in just his second year now. What do you think this means for his spot in Tennessee and maybe for his career? What do you see that being?
I see this. Unless the Tennessee Titans head coach and management really just want Marcus in there game one, I think that you will see Mettenberger starting game one. Mettenberger played in a NFL offense at LSU. He has 1 year in the system at Tennessee. He has a bigger arm, and the experience in the system is the biggest thing. Mariota played in nothing that was anything close to an NFL system. And there's a lot more to playing quarterback in the NFL than throwing the football. Knowing the system, knowing the routes, knowing the language, knowing how to audible. He didn't have to audible at Oregon, nor did he call plays in the huddle. That's a big deal when it comes to a quarterback in the NFL, making the checks at the line, calling the plays in the huddle, knowing what the plays mean.
So from early on, you think Mettenberger has a leg up?
Oh, definitely, no doubt. And unless they are just in a rush to get him on the field, I think Mettenberger will be the Texas starter.
Well, I know that anytime you pick a guy this high and you pay him what you have to pay whoever you pick this high, you're going to want to get him out there. Now, your first game, sixth game, eighth game, I don't know, but you throw this kind of money out there because this is who you intend your guy to be.
Right. Well, the way that the new CBA is, the collective bargaining agreement, rookies don't make near what they used to, 5 years ago.
Right.
That's definitely the number 2 pick's making so much money that you want to get him out there. Definitely. It's not like that anymore. Of course, they still make good money, but they're not making what they used to, in the top 10 picks of the draft.
Right.
It's much more of a reasonable number, seeing as how they haven't done anything on the field in the NFL yet. But it's still your number 2 pick. You still made an investment that's the number 2 overall pick in the draft, so you want to see something from it. So whether it be you want to see something out of your monetary investment or the investment of that draft pick, they're going to want to see something. But I don't think that Mariota can make up the ground and pass Mettenberger in one offseason coming from the offense that he's coming from. And the fact is that Mettenberger has an NFL arm. He's NFL size, NFL arm, NFL trained in the offense. So, and he's been there for a year. And this is so.
Okay, so Winston is probably going to be called upon very early. You think that Mariota may have a little more development time leeway? I
think he will. I think he'll have to have it.
3 years from now, Tennessee happy with this pick?
3 years from now, Tennessee's happy with this pick because Mariota will not fail. He will work hard. He will not have the maturity issues on and off the field, but more importantly, on the field. He'll take his lumps. He'll work. He will devote himself 100% to being the best he can be. When he gets knocked down, he'll get back up. You won't see him throwing fits on the sideline. He will give everything he's got to being a great NFL quarterback, and he's got all the tools. Physically, the ability to throw the ball, he has that. I think he's a really smart player. It's going to take him time to learn the NFL system, but he can do it. And he's got great escapability. I kind of compare him to probably a little bit like Colin Kaepernick as far as the running ability. He ran a 4.5, somewhere around the 4.5 flat combine. So he's really fast. He's really smart. He's really humble, and he's not a look-at-me guy. He's a team guy. And I think that Mariota is by far the safer pick of the two.
Well, we'll definitely see how. Personally, that's my opinion as well. But we will see how it plays out over the coming season and seasons. I want to jump down real quick now to pick 5, the Washington Redskins, and the reason I have a little bit of interest in them is because last year Washington was a soap opera with RG3 in and out, and the coach is not liking him and maybe liking him a little bit, and then absolutely hating him. Their first pick is an offensive tackle out of Iowa. Any thoughts on that with regards to the quarterback situation, picking an offensive tackle? They've got a new O-line coach that has come over from the Cowboys, and that was a big strength for the Cowboys. What do you think about the Redskins moving forward, more so with the quarterback situation maybe than anything else?
Well, there could be a couple reasons. They could just have looked at their offensive line in the offseason and said, man, we really, really need to upgrade. Or they could say, we got to find out what we're going to do with our quarterback. And to figure that out, we have to be able to protect them, give them a running game, so we can make a good, sound judgment on our quarterbacks, or a combination of both. Probably a combination of both. They probably want to kind of try to take away all excuses and possible excuses from whoever is under center.
Okay.
By saying, okay, you have a good offensive line. We've improved the offensive line. You have a running game. You have a good running back, Alfred Morris. You should be playing well. There's no more excuses.
Right.
So I think they probably identified a need on the offensive line, and I think they want to obviously give the quarterback every opportunity he can to be successful and be able to see, okay, he's been given everything that he can, and he still can be, he can or cannot be.
Okay. Pick 6, New York Jets. They've got a new coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new GM. Their first pick is a defensive end. Geno Smith, the quarterback last year, looks like they're staying with that.
All right.
What do you think about it?
The new coach, defensive-minded, brand new defense, Arizona, likes to be aggressive. When their pick came up, I predicted the pick. Leonard Williams, USC, top 3, top 2 talent in the draft. He can play defensive end. He can play defensive tackle. In their 3-4, he'll probably be a defensive end. Very disruptive, can rush the passer. Very good against the run. High motor. Every possible thing you want from a defensive lineman. Versatility, ability to push the pocket, ability to rush the passer, strongest point of attack, everything you could want.
So you definitely like the pick, and you like the pick coming from a defensive-minded head coach.
Oh, it's a great pick. And on that defense, it was already a good defense, and this just makes it better. So they're going to be tough on defense, definitely. As far as Geno Smith, I think where we just talked about the Redskins helping out their quarterback, the Jets have also done that in the offseason, but they're putting receivers because the Jets have a pretty decent offensive line. The Jets have traded for Brandon Marshall,
who was with the Bears.
Who's a big target. He's a very good receiver. They also drafted Devin Smith from Ohio State, who was one of the top receivers in the draft. So they're putting some weapons. Last year in the first or second round, they drafted Jason Morrow, a tight end, pass-catching tight end. So it seems like they're trying to also help out their quarterback situation by putting pieces around them and seeing, okay, we're going to put the pieces around this guy and see what he can do. But in the later rounds, the Jets did draft Bryce Petty from Baylor. So they're already looking at other possibilities if Geno does not play well.
Right. Certainly.
Which
and
I believe they should.
Yeah, it was a tough spot for him last year. He was erratic at best. I want to jump down real quick to the Bears. And we mentioned that they lost Brandon Marshall. They've got a new coach, John Fox, who's been in Denver for the past several years. He's coaching the Bears now. I forget their head coach last year, his name, but he was an absolute disaster. Just as a fan and an observer, there was nothing about him that instilled any kind of confidence in me. And his team played that way, especially down the stretch. They were one of the easiest targets for a defeat and an embarrassing defeat as the year went along. So John Fox, I would assume you would say is an upgrade, and I know that they took their first pick was a wide receiver, Kevin White, out of West Virginia, and they certainly replacing Brandon Marshall with that. At least that's the intent. What do you think about the Bears playing in a tough NFC North with new coach John Fox?
I think they'll be improved. They drafted Kevin White. They have Alshon Jeffrey. They drafted Grasu on the O-line. The O-line has needed help. They got a good defensive tackle from Florida State. They are switching to a 3-4 defense. I don't see the Bears competing in that division this year. I just don't see it. I don't think they have enough. I don't particularly believe in Jay Cutler anymore. I think he's had plenty of chances to show that he can get the job done and get to a Super Bowl, and he just hasn't done it. And the Bears they're changing defense from a 4-3 to 3-4. That's a big change. They did draft some pieces to go with that, but I don't see the Bears being a threat in that division with the Lions and the Packers.
Right.
I see the Bears as the fourth place.
Yeah, it's a tough division, certainly. Pick 9. The New York Giants took an offensive tackle. Last year, as it turned out going down the stretch, I think one of the most dynamic, exciting players in the entire NFL was Odell Beckham Jr., the rookie wide receiver. Once he got healthy, he just absolutely ripped the league up, set records for touchdowns and yardage, and for only playing in 12 games and as a rookie. A big problem that the Giants had was protecting their quarterback, Eli Manning, and also giving their running backs holes to run through. How do you feel like they have done in the draft addressing that? Again, they started out with an offensive tackle out of Miami.
They did, and it's clear that they needed that pick. They have Victor Cruz coming back, Ruben Randall coming back, of course, Odell Beckham, who the second half of the season was the biggest difference maker in the NFL last year.
Correct. Yes, he was.
He comes back, and news comes out after the season that he really wasn't 100% at all last year. He was probably close to maybe 90, but he was not 100%. He stays healthy. You have the compliments of Ruben Randall, Victor Cruz. The Giants always have good tight end play. Tom Coughlin got good tight ends. Now you bring in a lineman or two, and there's a running game go with that, which they also drafted a really good running back last year. I can't think of his name right now, but he really showed promise last year. When called, they can get some time for the quarterback and develop a decent running game. They're going to be really, really tough, really explosive on offense, because when you have Victor Cruz and Ruben Randall, you can't double cover everybody.
Right.
And that's going to leave Beckham with more chances for big plays.
Well, and certainly Larry Donnell, the tight end, is a big target who, when gone to, can certainly go off. We saw it happen 3 touchdowns one night. Right.
And, when you have a situation where you have receivers, really good receivers, and a really good tight end, most of the time when you double cover somebody, it's with a safety. And a really good tight end will hold that safety in the middle of the field because they don't want to leave the middle, because knowing that tight end can beat that linebacker deep, and that's an easy score. So when you have that tight end there that'll hold that safety inside, it makes it harder to double these wideouts. And then vice versa. When you have the great wideout, and then when you safety to double somebody, that opens up the middle for the tight end. So if they can get good offensive line play, they will be explosive and hard to stop on offense.
Do you think they can compete this year with the Cowboys and the Eagles?
Well, that depends on the defense. Offensively, I think they'll be – I'm not big on yards and that, but just how effective is a unit. That offense will be as effective and as dangerous as any with good offensive line.
Pick 10, and I just want to compare Pick 10, St. Louis taking Todd Gurley out of Georgia, the running back. Another big-name running back that was really getting it done last year, especially in the second half of the season, Melvin Gordon out of Wisconsin. I was a little surprised that Gurley went before Gordon. What are your thoughts on that? Gordon went a few picks later to San Diego. Gurley goes in pick 10 to St. Louis. Did you like the pick for St. Louis and of a running back, and did you like the choice of Gurley before Gordon?
Okay, first I'll start off with St. Louis and the pick and then I'll go into comparing the two.
Okay.
St. Louis, for me, that was the biggest surprise of the first round, was Gurley going both that early and to St. Louis. 2 years ago, St. Louis drafted Zach Stacy. He had a really good rookie year. Last year, they drafted Trey Mason from Auburn. He did not come from a pro system. It took him maybe half a season to get used to it, but once he did, he had a really good second half of the year and was really coming on at the end of the year. So that gives him 2 good backs. I actually was watching, and I said, well, I know they're not drafting a running back with those 2 young guys, but obviously they thought Gurley was that big of a difference maker, that good. Keep in mind, their head coach was the head coach of Tennessee Titans when they drafted Eddie George in the first round, and he built his team around Eddie George, and that looks to be what he's doing right now. He even went as far to say, I don't even care if Gurley can even play this season. He's the guy that we want to build our offense around from here going forward. They also drafted a couple offensive linemen to bolster that running game. They brought in a proven quarterback in the offseason. They have added a couple of offensive linemen. They have a nasty defense. They have a good tight end. They have a good receiver or two. If you beat the Rams this year, you're going to earn it.
So you like what they're doing?
Oh, yeah. I said a few years ago when the play was made for RG3 and the Redskins gave up everything they did.
Right.
It was to the Rams. And in that same draft, the Rams, they moved back to 6. And then the Cowboys moved from 13 to 6 because they wanted to draft Morris Claiborne. So the Rams moved back twice. And I saw everything they got, and I said, if they use all these picks right that they got from these 2 times of moving back, they can stock their roster with talent. And they have. Sam Bradford didn't work out. They bring in Nick Foles. I think terrible move by Chip Kelly because Sam Bradford seems to tear an ACL getting out of bed in the morning. And Nick Foles is a proven winner and can get the job done. Is he going to go to the Pro Bowl? Probably not. But you put the right weapons around him, and he's going to manage the game for you. And with now these three young backs, a probably improved offensive line, and with their defense as good as it is, I'm not saying they're going to win every game, but if you beat them, you're going to earn it because they're going to run the ball, they have a good quarterback, and they're going to be something. They're going to be, I think, a breakout team.
You know, and St. Louis had some big wins over some tough teams last year. If I remember correctly, they beat Seattle.
Yeah, they did.
And they did have some tough some big wins. I wouldn't be surprised to see them be a real issue this year for some teams and quite possibly in their division. New Orleans Saints, first pick an offensive tackle, Andres Pete out of Stanford. What do you think about that as a pick?
I think he has big-time potential. I don't think he's as polished as a Lyle Collins as a pass protector. He's really big, almost 6'7", 315 or so. Great size, great strength. His father played in the NFL. A lot of potential, and the Saints needed an offensive lineman that.
I actually jumped the track just a bit. I wanted to give you a moment to give your thoughts on Melvin Gordon, the great running back out of Wisconsin, going to the Chargers.
It took me all of one game to become a huge Melvin Gordon fan. I watched him against LSU, and I've never seen a running back carve up LSU as easily. I love Melvin Gordon as a running back. As far as the comparison from Melvin Gordon to Todd Gurley, Gurley had a little bit better top speed, but Melvin Gordon had great acceleration. He ran a 4.5 at the combine, or a little bit over 4.5, but I saw that some other teams had him clocked in the upper 4.4s or mid 4.4s. And tell you what, I don't know what he ran at the combine, but I know what he runs on the field with pads on. And he's fast. He's really fast. He has great acceleration. He's tougher to tackle than people think, bigger than people think. He's stronger than people think. Between the two, I would have to go with Gordon if I'm taking a first-round running back, because I don't know if him having any injuries, especially a torn ACL or something like that.
Well, he did have that little hip issue in the game against LSU, and I venture to say had he not been forced out of that game, they probably would have beat LSU.
I don't see any way, if he doesn't go out of that game, that LSU wins that game, because they just didn't have an answer for him.
John, I want to jump down to spot 22. The Pittsburgh Steelers last year were 11-5, which is an excellent record. They won their division, but that was in spite of a horrible defense. Their points per game given up were worst since 91. Passing yards and sacks worst since the late 80s. It was a very un-Steeler-like defense. Their first pick was outside linebacker Bud Dupree from Kentucky. What do you think about that for the Steelers?
I really like Steelers' first-round pick, Bud Dupree. He's 6'4" or so, 265, 270. He'll play probably on the strong side, outside linebacker, the side that teams are running to, and he'll be able to take on the tight end at the point of attack, or an offensive tackle at the point of attack, or a fullback at the point of attack, and hold it and set the edge and slow down the run game for the Steelers. He's also athletic and quick enough and has good enough pass rushing ability that on third and long, he can really get after the pass. I think, and the Steelers' defense didn't need help in just one area. They didn't need help in just pass defense. They didn't need help in just run defense. They didn't need help in just pass rushing. They needed help everywhere. And this is the guy that will help in every aspect of the Steelers' defense. Now, are they going to go from where they were last year to great this year? No, because Ike Taylor's gone. They did draft guy from Ole Miss, but it's left to be seen what he turns out to be, but he definitely won't be Ike Taylor this year. So the Steelers have gone forward on defense with that pick, but it remains to be seen how much.
That gets us through roughly two-thirds of the first round. Anything with just first-round picks, and I'll ask you about overall assessments about a couple of teams in a minute, but going down the line through the rest of the first round, anything stand out to you as a great pick for a team or a head-scratcher?
Well, like I said, the biggest surprise was Gurley at 10. I really like what the Jets did taking Leonard Williams. The Raiders, we don't talk about them much. They are quietly putting together a good team.
Okay,
Raiders.
All right.
They took Amari Cooper. They had a young quarterback last year that made strides and showed promise. And now they take easily the most pro-ready, put him in and let him play receiver in college, Amari Cooper, and continue to draft well really at every position. So I like what they're doing. I like what they did in the first round. The Eagles lost Jeremy Mack. They took a receiver from USC, obviously Chip Kelly is familiar with, and I think he'll step right in and contribute for the Eagles next year. Denver, I really like Denver taking Shane Ray. Shane Ray had some trouble on the field last year. Got thrown out of the SEC championship game for a little bit questionable late hit for me. But he plays with a lot of passion, and he's very explosive. I think the closest thing to Von Miller since Von Miller came out. Now, put Shane Ray with Von Miller. Denver also brought in longtime great Dallas Cowboy pass rusher from Dallas.
DeMarcus Ware?
DeMarcus Ware. They now have those three pass rushers on the same team. Now, we're assuming that Denver is going to put up points. Shane Ray gives them, along with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware on the same field, if they get you in third and long, you're in trouble. And I really like what they did and kind of what they're building their team for, and it's aggressive. It seems like they're going to be really aggressive, really go after. Also, later in the draft, they did some good things with offensive linemen, a blocking tight end. It looks like they're trying to be a little bit more balanced and get paid a little bit more of a running game. And, if they can be balanced on offense with these playmakers on defense, they'll be really tough. One thing I noticed, too, was Indianapolis continued to add weapons around Andrew Luck, and I think they are going to just continue to get better and better on offense.
Well, you mentioned Denver going to, shoring up the running game, and down the stretch last year, they went to that a lot. And in fact, C.J. Anderson, who didn't even see the field in any significant way, at least until 2/3 of the way through the season, was a touchdown scoring machine. They went that route a lot in the last 5, 6, 7 games of the year.
Yeah, and I think that they look to continue that. I think they look to continue doing that, continue to be balanced, continue to run the football, continue to take pressure off of Peyton, while still, of course, allowing him to have the freedom to do what he wants to do with the offense and take shots when they're there. But I think they're looking to be more balanced and take pressure off of Peyton and play good defense. And I think they will in that. I think they're going to be tough.
So, John, as we're recording this now, it's a little bit after 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Obviously, the draft is still going on, but we've got 4 or 5 rounds behind us. I wanted to ask you specifically about how you feel like some teams have done so far, just your assessment overall, not just the first round. And let's start with the Saints. How do you feel they've done so far addressing needs?
I think the Saints have done pretty well. I don't love what they've done, but I think they've done pretty well. Taking Pete, Breeze was running for his life last year, and they clearly needed help on the O-line. And this guy has a lot of potential, great size, great frame. I mean, he's prototype left tackle. They also got an inside linebacker from Clemson who is a high-impact guy who can rush the passer. They drafted a outside linebacker from Washington, and he's very good at pressuring the quarterback also. So that's something that the Saints really needed. The Saints needed O-line help. They needed to be able to get after the passer. They had no pass rush. They needed to be able to get after the passer, and they have addressed that. Now, in the offseason, they brought in Brandon Browner, who has won the last 2 Super Bowls. One with Seattle and one with the Patriots. That's a big deal. They really needed him, and they brought him in. And they also drafted a corner from Florida State to provide depth and somebody for the future. So I think they've done a pretty good job.
We've already touched on Tampa some. Let's just hit on the division foes of the Saints, the Falcons and the Panthers. Anything strike you especially significant with regards to what either one of those teams have done so far?
Well, the Falcons, with their first pick, the Falcons have a new head coach. He's the former defensive coordinator of Seattle. The Falcons had no pass rush at all, and they went and got Vic Beasley, in the first round. Probably the safest pass rusher in the draft as far as on-the-field production and off-the-field lack of problem. Vic Beasley, an explosive player, really good player. They took Jalen Collins in the second round and Kevin Coleman, a speedster at running back, in the third. They are going to score points with Matt Ryan. They're going to score points. They desperately needed a pass rusher. They got one. They got a pretty good one in Beasley. I don't think they'll go night and day in defense, but they did bring in a really good defensive coach. So I think they will be improved and look to be more balanced running the football. Carolina.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolina.
Carolina, they took an outside linebacker / safety combo player, solid player, but nothing to really talk about. They took a Funches. He's a tight end / wide receiver from Michigan. It looks like that they're trying to go after really tall wide receivers. He's a 6'5" or 6'6" guy, great athlete, played tight end in Michigan, but blocking is the last thing on his mind. Reminds me a little of Marcus Colston, maybe a little heavier than Marcus Colston. Marcus Colston's on the tight end, obviously. Maybe this year's version of Jimmy Graham coming out. Not a blocker, but can give you problems matchup-wise. You try to cover him with a linebacker, he's going to be more athletic. Try to cover him with a corner, he's going to be bigger and taller. So it looks like that, with last year's pick of Kelvin Benjamin, they want really big guys to give Newton big targets.
Right. And Benjamin actually was, even though he was a bit inconsistent, he was an impact player last year.
Yeah.
Steelers, we've already addressed their first-round pick. How do you see what they've done so far other than that? They were really an offensive powerhouse last year, but defensively, again, we've talked about their issues. How do you feel that what they've done so far in the draft?
Well, they took Golson at cornerback from Ole Miss. He's a good player. A little bit of worry with his height there. He's only 5'9", but he's definitely a ball hog. That came over a lot of interceptions at Ole Miss. So the thing is, Bud Dupree will help their pass defense, because if the quarterback doesn't have as long to throw the ball, it makes your corners better. I do not think that, especially with the loss of their longtime defensive coordinator, I do not think that Pittsburgh takes a huge step forward this year on defense. I think they will be better, but I do not think there's been enough done for them to take a huge step forward. They drafted Kenny Coates in the 3rd round, another receiver from Auburn. He shows a lot of promise, big, fast, a little bit inconsistent with drops, but somebody that can be a good receiver for them down the road. Another weapon for Roethlisberger in the offense.
And that's good to see, because I think they're going to need them, but certainly from a standpoint of quarterback, number 1 running back, and number 1 wide receiver, the Steelers probably have as much skill in those 3 positions as any other team in the NFL have in 3 positions on the field.
Oh, definitely. Offensively, they are a team to be reckoned with now. They have built up their offensive line much better than it was a few years ago. Of course, you got Ben, who's been playing at a level he's as good as he's ever been.
Yes, he is.
So
he went through a stretch there last year where he was setting some crazy touchdown records and yardage records.
They have a collection of wide receivers led by Antonio Brown. Now you add Kenny Coates to that. They have a good tight end, Heath Miller, and they have one of the top 2 or 3 now running backs in the NFL in the kid from Michigan State. So they have everything they need, and they're going to be very, very strong on offense again this year.
John, real quick, and we're kind of coming up against a time crunch just a little bit. Cowboys, I know they took a player with some off-the-field issues, which they are prone to do. Assess for me their overall. What do you think they've done so far?
I think they've done a really good job, except for addressing the running back situation. They took a really good corner in the 1st round. A guy that this corner they drafted had a 40-something inch vertical, and he had over a 12-foot broad jump. He set the world record for broad jump at the combine. The measuring thing for the combine didn't even go past 12 feet. He jumped past 12 feet. Wow. So very, very explosive. Obviously, a lot of potential at the cornerback spot for them. Morris Claiborne, and I thought this coming when he was coming out. I just don't think he's big and strong enough to not only stay with NFL receivers, but to tackle with supporting the run game and stay healthy. And, he's proven that over and over again. He just can't stay healthy or be physical enough in the NFL. So I think now they're trying to kind of move on from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's certainly been a disappointment. Let's see.
As far as Gregory, they will have a security detail for him. If anybody knows how to deal with this, it's Jerry Jones. And if anybody will go out of his way enough to make this work, it's Jerry Jones. He will make sure. I saw today that he has a security guy already assigned to him. He also has a handler that will be within 24 hours. So this guy has super ability, super talent. As long as you can keep him on the field and keep his nose clean, he's going to be a good player. I saw his interview from the draft, and he seems really motivated to prove Dallas right.
So other than teams I've specifically asked you about, give me a team that has, or even if it includes somebody we've already talked about, give me your assessment on, to this point, who may have helped themselves the most, and give me a team that you feel like has let the 2015 draft go by and not done well with it.
Teams I like several teams, what they've done. I like the Jags. I like what the Jags have done, bringing in a very good defensive lineman, bringing in T.J. Yeldon. The Dolphins, I think, have really helped themselves, bringing in Parker from Louisville. The Jets have had a good draft.
Out in San Diego, do you feel like Gordon is an immediate impact player? Probably yes, correct?
As long as he has good blocks, Gordon, there is no reason Gordon should not be an impact player right off the bat.
Give me 1 or 2 teams that you feel like have kind of missed the boat a little bit the past couple of days.
I don't love what Cincinnati did. Cincinnati has 2 very good starting offensive tackles. Their first 2 picks were offensive tackles. Neither one of those guys are going to play at all.
Wow.
They have Whitworth, who is playing at a Pro Bowl level. They have Andre Smith, who's a very good tackle and is not going to be removed by any rookie. Now, one guy's in a contract year, and one guy is 34. Whitworth is still going strong. Andre Smith may leave next year after this season, but still, your first 2 picks, they're Then it's at the bench. So that's the one thing that kind of sticks out to me is like, wow, what have you done for your team to help them this year? I also like Cleveland's draft. I think they're building a really, really strong defense. I think they get any kind of quarterback play. I think they would be a little bit of a surprise and be really strong on defense.
I understand there's some questions about the Cardinals picks.
One thing that the Cardinals offense has needed is a tight end. They have two really good receivers. In the first round, they drafted an offensive lineman, which guy had big potential, and I like that pick. The second round, they chose to move back. Well, the team that moved up to them took tight end from Minnesota, the best tight end in the country. It was the Ravens moved up and traded up to get that pick. They only moved back, I think, 4 or 5 slots. But that tight end from Minnesota could have helped them a lot. They have no threat as a tight end. And this guy fell into their lap, and they chose to say no.
Wow.
Now, they did move back and take a guy who will play outside linebacker and be a good pass rusher for them. But passing up on that tight end from Minnesota when you don't have any semblance of a offensive game plan where the tight end is involved and scares defenses, I think was.
Well, son, that's going to wrap it up for us. I certainly appreciate your input and your time and the time you put into watching and studying and making notes. I appreciate it a whole lot. We're gonna sign off now, but before we do, I want to say that I'm kicking around the idea of in August doing a little preseason look at both college and NFL. Can we get you on board for that?
Sure, I'd love to.
Beautiful, thanks. Well, look, I will talk to you tonight or tomorrow after we get some stuff done with regards to show prep, and I'll give you a shout.
Okay.
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Well, again, that was my son, John Jr., football expert extraordinaire.
No joke.
I'm going to go ahead and give him that. He's really something. And going back to when a couple of years ago, when you talked me into getting into fantasy football, first thing I did was pick up.
That was your secret
weapon. That was my secret weapon. I picked up the phone.
I mean, he knows everything. That's insane.
Yeah. I picked up the phone, said, hey, are you in this with me? He said, heck yeah. And so definitely,
on our trophy for fantasy football, it has each name, and on the first year you won, you put John Springer. And I was like, hey, that's not fair. It's Team Springer.
Well, and the reason I did that was because we're both named John.
Yeah,
but the second.
But I mean, your grandson's even.
And my grandson even had some input on that, and Team Springer.
It's gonna be cool having him on for preseason. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that's gonna be good. And we might do college in one episode and do NFL in another, because I mean, as you can see, he knows more than we could talk about in 5 hours.
Oh yeah. We had to cut him off because I know he could still.
He'd still be talking. But anyway, terrific job by him. I appreciate that, and that was a thrill for me having him on. It really was. We're going to wrap up our sports extravaganza. We hope you enjoyed it, and the next time we come back to you, in all likelihood, it's going to be an interview with an author.
Yeah.
Sometime several days from
Next time you hear from us, there will be a boxing fight winner. I kept saying boxing fight.
Boxing fight. When he said that to me the first time, I looked at him.
You can't say that.
Did you really say boxing fight?
We'll have a boxing winner. We'll have
Kentucky
Derby winner. We'll have some NHL and NBA playoff games played.
Then you'll have that.
And the draft will be done. So that's calling it Super Saturday. And for a good reason, there's so much going on.
And
we are going to go watch some of that.
Yes, we
that's
are.
going on right now.
Yes, we are.
And we're going to get this out as soon as possible, so by the time y'all hear it, it's not too old of news.
Yeah, in a podcast format, you certainly... podcasts aren't generally for things that are happening, for breaking news.
Definitely not, no.
But we're doing that,
we're going to burn the midnight oil to get it out to y'all on time.
ASAP.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so we always love getting emails from y'all at theboomerandxshow at yahoo.com. We got a Twitter handle now that's at Boomer&X and y'all can go on there and, what is it, like us? No. Follow us?
I'm not a Twitter expert. So do something with us. For those of you that know how Twitter works, do us on Twitter, please. That's my equivalent of boxing fight.
No, you like us on Facebook.
Yeah.
Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
And we're always love hearing feedback. So I'll go on iTunes, give us some reviews. I put a thing out the other day and got some real cool feedback. It's real fun, getting that. So do that, and that's it for me, John. You got anything else?
No, I'm done. We're good. We're going to get this out to you guys ASAP. And thanks for listening.